Hello, and welcome to the Dyson Leadership Podcast, where our focus is adding value to you. And as my business always says, unlocking your leadership. So I'm joined by a guest with me today that is also a fellow Maxwell leadership trainer, coach. But actually, this individual, Michael Pope, is here with me, and he is actually on faculty with the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team, their program, specifically for their marketing system. But he has got a much deeper connection to the Maxwell Leadership brand than I do. But I really appreciate him taking time to join us, talk through some things, and share with us just some insights, some thoughts, some things to add value to us and our network. So, Michael, thank you for being on, and I'll let you say hello to our podcast listeners today.
You're welcome, Nick. I'm happy to be here. And hello, listeners. I am Michael Pope, located in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. Very excited to be here today on today's show.
Awesome. Well, Michael, I know I've got so many questions that I could ask you and dive into, but we'll keep it very simple to start out. And I just want to ask you, because I joked about it with another Maxwell leadership coach. I was asking their story, and I said, leadership training is not something you just walk into. You wake up one day and you Google it and decide, hey, this is what I'm going to start doing. So how about you share with our audience, first off, what all do you do as far as you're in? Because all the Maxwell coaches, we all have different niche markets, different focuses that we take. So what about you specifically? What makes you unique?
Absolutely. So really what makes me unique, Nick, is that I'm known as the coach's tech guy. So I'm really a trusted authority when it comes to tech and marketing. And you mentioned I'm a faculty member with the Maxwell team. So I'm part of the marketing solutions group. So not necessarily the system, but the host marketing solutions. There's a lot of things. And so that's really what kind of makes me unique. So my experience is I have now 30 years of IT experience in the corporate arena. And so I'm able to bring a lot of that to the table when it comes to marketing, leadership, technology, and all of that.
That's definitely very unique, because I've learned, because I've worked in IT, business intelligence, things like that in my corporate career for a number of years. And what I've learned is the ability to speak, communicate, provide training, leadership, those types of things. That is not super common in those areas. So somebody that's able to bridge that gap of the technical and the personal communication side, that's a very unique area to come from. So it's really a cool combination to see.
And that wasn't me years ago, just so you know. So that wasn't me years ago.
Sure. And I know even for me, my story, that's the same way. I was an extreme introvert growing up, and I was more the tech kid, video games, computers, you name it, anything technology. But I did not do people, and definitely branched out and grown. And that's been a great thing. So how about you talk us through a little bit of your leadership journey? Because there again, there's a lot of people, they don't just instantly get the leadership recognition. They don't immediately recognize that they're a leader. I know a lot of people that I interact with that are up and coming leaders. They ask and question, they say, well, I don't lead anybody. I'm not really a leader. I don't have the title position. I deal with that a lot. But what exactly is your leadership journey like?
Absolutely. So Nick, great question. When I was younger, if you had to ask me when I was in my early 20s, about if I saw myself as a leader, I would have said no, because I never saw myself growing up as a leader. I'm a natural introvert, used to be terrified of public speaking, terrified of people, really, like you. I mean, I'm an IT person, so heads down, sending text messages, chat, perfect. People, no. I wanted nothing to do with it. And so for me, part of my leadership journey was, I remember back in 1997, I learned a secret from an entrepreneur that really changed my whole life. I mean, I remember asking him about, I said, Percy, how are you able to be so confident and have so much charisma with dealing with people and have people see you as a leader? And I remember him handing me a book to read. And Nick, to be honest with you, at that time, I had just graduated from college. I wasn't a reader at all. I had no intention of reading that book. But however, thankfully, he called me up, asking me about the book. And once he realized that I was making excuses about not reading it, he was like, hey, can you read one chapter? And I was like, sure, I can read one chapter. So I opened up the book, and I keep the book handy always, Nick, around me, because the book is The Magic of Thinking Big. And he had me turn to chapter 2. And chapter 2 is cure yourself of excuse-itis, the failure disease. And when I read that title, I immediately wanted to read that book. And it felt like I was getting punched in the gut, Nick. But I started learning that all of the failures in my life was a direct response to my excuses. And even me thinking that I'm just because thinking because I'm quiet and I'm an introvert that I can't communicate with people, right? I used to put those together, but going through that book, it started to uncover and really eliminate a lot of the excuses in my life and open up the door to growth. And I started reading other personal development groups and that books, and that's how I learned about John Maxwell. I heard him speak from stage, and the first leadership book I ever read from John Maxwell was Developing the Leader Within You. The original book had a white cover. I remember reading it, and John taught me that I could be a leader myself. I didn't have to have a title. I didn't have to have a team, like you mentioned earlier, right? That I had to first lead myself. And then he said leadership is influence. So I started learning that really what that meant for me was leadership as an example. So I could be an example in every area of my life, and I'm always influencing people based on that example.
That's so good, and there's so many things kind of can dive into and go from there. I know for me and in my journey, some of my story, I was in a lot of leadership training workshops
Mm.
for students, college, so many different things I was involved in. But my mindset was always the thing of, well, I'm getting this training, I'm getting these things, and this will help me when I'm in management and leadership and when I'm in these roles. And that was my mindset. And it wasn't until I came across John Maxwell, and that was through a lot of the leadership training and business school and everything else, that he was, oh, he's the leadership guru. If you want to learn about leadership, you need to go and read John Maxwell. So I did,
Mm-hmm.
and started putting the pieces together saying, oh, leadership is actually just influence. I influence people every single day. So all this leadership stuff I'm learning, it applies daily. It's not that I wait and apply it after I'm in the position. I'm learning this stuff and I can go ahead and put it into practice now. And that was a big kind of revelation to me and big impact for me. So what for you talking about kind of growing out of it and the book that you read, getting out of kind of your excuses and your mindset that you are in, what are some things or some processes, something kind of some practical examples that maybe somebody that's listening could use to break out of a mindset that's kind of trapping them in excuses or kind of limiting what they believe their potential could be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know for me, once I read the book and started learning to really identify the excuses, and I always look at if something stops me from doing what I know I should do or what I want to do, then I have to ask myself, right, am I making an excuse or is it a legitimate reason? And in most cases, Nick, it's an excuse. And so you just have to really reframe your mind to say, okay, if an excuse comes up, I'm going to eliminate it or I'm going to move it to the side. And for me, the way I had to do that for me was really affirmations and deciding, why I wanted something. So I would put together a list of reasons why I wanted to do a certain thing, and I would stack that list up. And so when an excuse came in, or when doubt came in, or fear, or any of that type of thing, all those reasons why would really make me stronger and bigger, right? It's kind of like a shield. It would help me bounce those off. And so for me, the main things is using affirmations on a regular basis to reprogram my mind for success, letting myself know that, hey, I am a doer, I can do this, I take action now type of thing. But then also just remembering why I want to do it. What's the end goal? Beginning with the end in mind, like Stephen Covey says.
Absolutely. So something else that came to mind for me, because one thing that I struggle with and I talk about quite frequently with people is, imposter syndrome, doubt, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the mindset things that you deal with. And one thing that I struggled with, and it truly does tie into excuses, for me, it was doubting yourself or doubting
Yes.
myself. And one of the things I remember, and it was a big eye opening moment for me as well, was I read Craig Groeschel's book, Winning the War in Your Mind.
Mm.
And he referenced in that book to do a thought audit, but then also have somebody else close to you. So I use my wife as
Yeah.
the
Smart.
example, And I said, if you hear me say anything negative that's demeaning to myself or limiting what I'm capable to do, write it down over like the next week or 2 weeks, and then come back to me and tell me, what am I saying out loud bad against myself? And then I'm going to do the same. If I have a negative thought and I recognize it and say, I can't do this because, and I'm making an excuse, I'm causing some doubt, write it down and then go back and look at it. And I compared what was I thinking versus what was she saying. One of the biggest eye-opening things for me is most of those things I thought were only in my head, I was actually saying and passing comments in front of my wife, not even realizing it, because what's on the inside, those doubts, insecurities, fears,
They come out.
they come out. And so that's a big thing a lot of people deal with and struggle with that I've learned. So,
And I'll tell you, having kids, so my wife and I have 3 sons, and because I understood what you just said, I'm very cautious about any words that come out of my mouth, especially around them, right? Even if I'm feeling a fear or a doubt, I'm not going to let my emotions show it because I don't want them picking that up, and because
right.
they'll feel it.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I've learned as well is what we say and how we interact with people, even those excuses that you've been talking about, they impact people around us, because even if it's your kids or your spouse, or let's even take it a step further. Let's say it's a professional that's working in a job and there's a new junior employee that started that's looking up to them, and they're hearing them talk about their doubts and insecurities and what they can't do. That's not a good example for that young new employee that's coming up, because there again, that's influence. That's part of leadership, is you are
Yeah.
impacting somebody else. And it's so impactful in that way. So that's fantastic. Just kind of continuing on that thought. What are some things that you see as some of the most common excuses people make for their career, their leadership? What are some of the most common things you see people just repeatedly using as excuses?
One big one. So with me being a tech and marketing coach, one big one that I see with up and coming leaders is I might fail or I might do it wrong, right? Because a lot of people are taught to look for that perfection, right? They're trying to get an A or an A plus, and one of the things I had to learn, and with my technology background, I quickly learned that it's okay to fail, because in technology, we're constantly, I learned at an early age to fail fast, make an adjustment. And as a software developer, that's what we do on a regular basis, right? We write some code, we try it out. It may work, it may not work. If it doesn't work, you make some tweaks, right? You make some tweaks along the way. Every software program is constantly having updates because it's never going to be a perfect system. And what I find out is there's a lot of up and coming leaders who are so afraid to take that risk. And so they're making excuses. Oh, I don't have it quite figured out yet, or I don't have the experience yet. So they won't take that next step to get that experience. Where a lot of us, we realize it's like we learn our experience through taking action, looking at the result, making adjustments based on the result, and continuing to move forward.
Absolutely. And even for me, I'm a person, I look back at it and I reflect a lot, and just thinking through what you're saying, I've experienced some of those personally, as I think many people, whoever's listening probably has at some point in their life,
Yeah.
their career. So one example for me is I wanted to be a instructor for college level business classes. I didn't want to do it full time. I didn't want to be a full-time faculty member, but it was just something. I had a passion for teaching and I wanted to teach business classes. And so I had my master's degree in business, and I didn't apply for jobs to be an adjunct business instructor. And the reason was I would click the link, I would go to the application, I would look at my resume and say, I just don't have it. I don't have enough on there. I don't have the right experience. I've never taught before. They're not going to talk to me because I've not taught. And I would never go through that process. And when I finally did, I got rejected several times. I mean, that was just what happens. And I remember when it was finally meeting the right people, having the right connections, having just enough experience to kind of pass, and getting that first opportunity to step into that. And then it was, wow, I'm finally here. I finally stepped out of my comfort zone and tried, and I'm finally here. But it's just getting past that point and actually doing it. But I could have easily just been stuck in that what if. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that gets us stuck. So I referenced imposter syndrome. One of the things that comes up for me is I referenced the perfectionist of imposter syndrome, where it's
That
I
used to be
can't
me.
I can't do this because I'm not perfect at it. I can't do these things because I've got to have it all perfect and in order before I can proceed. So a lot of people struggle with that kind of mindset. So as you're coaching people, working through with them, navigating these things, what's a what's a good key strategy for those people to finally realize they need to get out of their comfort zone? Like, what's something you could tell somebody in that instance to help get them out of their comfort zone?
Yeah. So one thing I normally tell my clients is go ahead and take that first step and celebrate the progress.
Oh, that's
Right?
so
We're
good.
not trying to wait for the result to celebrate the result. We celebrate the progress. So every step along the way. Right? So that for that up and coming leader, it may be scheduling a meeting. It may be running a meeting. It doesn't matter the outcome of the meeting, but hey, you led a meeting today. Celebrate the fact that you did that, right? Celebrate that progress along the way, and realize that done is better than perfect, and you just be willing to do that. And I've been the exact same way as you. Like I remember seeing an opportunity for a speaking opportunity, and their budget was between 11, no, I think it was 10,000 to 15,000. And I was like, well, I've never submitted an application that high before, but I looked at it. I was like, I can do this. I filled in the form, I submitted it, and I felt relieved because at first I was like hesitant. I was like, man, I don't know if I can submit it for that high. I submitted it and I felt great about it. And I celebrated the fact that I did it.
Yeah,
I didn't win the position. A lot of other people, somebody else won it, but I still felt great knowing that I was courageous enough, bold enough to submit that application because I believed enough in myself.
absolutely. And I've been in similar situations where, like, I know the services that I provide in the area that I operate here in North Carolina, I have kind of a price point and, have some adjustments that I can make. I can be a little flexible with people. But I remember looking at it, and when I was initially getting started, I was pricing myself too low, and it wasn't something that was really sustainable. I was really not even breaking even, and it was kind of the mindset of I was still struggling with the feelings that I didn't belong in
Mm,
that I couldn't charge the money, that I didn't have the content, I didn't have the information, I didn't have that. I don't belong in that space, and I've got to do it for basically nothing or at a loss. And eventually I will earn my reputation there. And it was finally the realization when I could propose something for fees that were higher than what I was expecting. And there was one in particular where they asked me about fees, and I told them what it was, and they said, okay, no problem. And then when it got done, they said, you did amazing. We put extra on your check just because of how amazing you were. And it caught
yeah.
me off guard because then I realized people are willing to pay this, and they gave it willingly because they were happy with the value that I added to them.
Yes.
So I could actually go and charge that as the base fee, and people are happy with that because I added good value to them. And I was so thrilled because it told me where I was at and was helping kind of reinforce that I was in a good place. So man, this has been great. Talking about people with struggles, doubts, things like that. So what are some other things that you feel like my listeners could take away as some key value? What's maybe a couple important leadership lessons that you've learned that you would be willing to share with our audience today?
Yeah. So I just want to piggyback on what you just said about taking the risk, right?
Sure.
So that's imposter syndrome. So that could apply to applying for promotion at work or even a different position at your company, right? We all deal with that imposter syndrome. But then in terms of the last question about what other leadership principles have I learned that really helped me out? And one big one is adding value and really just leading with adding value. I learned that from my grandpa Joe many years ago. He he believed in adding value wherever he went. I remember he told me, Michael, you have to serve, be willing to serve others. Right? He always had that mindset. And so for me, any arena I've ever been in, I've always done my best to add value. And it's opened up so many doors for me. Just by me adding value, I've had people give me opportunities to lead in certain capacities because of my willingness to add value. And that's how I got on faculty with the Maxwell team. I joined John Maxwell team in November 2019. So right before COVID hit. And I was asked to join faculty in January 2021. So that was a very short time frame, but it's just because I went in with the mindset of adding value first. So that's the key. I remember being recognized as Toastmaster of the Year in 2019 here in Ohio. And it was just because of years of me adding value in that organization, leading and adding value in there. And I've had awards in the company I was working for and just other things. But I'll just say, wherever you at, look for opportunities to add value to others.
That's so good. And I know there's people I know and conversations that I've had, even in a recent leadership training that I provided, I was telling them something similar where it's you add value to people first. And I referenced John Maxwell always quotes Zig Ziglar, if you help other people get
Yep.
what they want, they will help you get what you want. And I stress that that's not a selfish thing. You don't go into it and say, I'm going to do this for them and expect them to do all of this great stuff for me and get me everything. But it's the attitude of you go in willing to help people, because when you give and you help and you serve, good things follow and good things happen.
Yeah.
Because,
And it doesn't mean you have to do it for free, right? So it's
right,
like a lot of people hear that and think, oh, I've got to do everything for free to add value. No, you can charge them, but you're still adding value, because if I truly believe in my services, and like Nick, if you truly believe in your leadership training services, it's okay to give somebody a price for it, because you're still adding value to them,
right.
because they're going to be better because you're in their life.
Absolutely. And even again, in a recent leadership training, we were talking about a similar topic. And what I told them is one of my key principles and key values is that truth, integrity, honesty. And it's that stressed for me of I will be the same regardless of where you see me. That if you see
Mm-hmm.
me at church, you see me at work, you
Yep.
see me in leadership training, you see me out at Walmart, I'm going to be the same person and I'm going to be willing to help and serve, but it depends on what area, obviously. You know, if it's for
Mm-hmm.
my services, yeah, there's a fee associated, but I'm going to provide value. If there's, another area where it's a family member, probably not going to charge a family member, for a piece of advice, but still that willingness, that heart to serve and add value to people is so important.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, like my wife and I are in children's ministry at our church, and I serve as far as the check-in process for the children's ministry. And so when the parents come in, like I'm checking the kids in, helping them with some of the basic things of getting set up. But I also, I'll empty the trash. I'll do really whatever needs to be done, because it's just adding value. But that's just who I am. So like you said, wherever I'm at, I'm going to be looking for opportunities to add value.
Absolutely. So we've got a few minutes left. I got a couple more fun questions for you,
Okay.
Michael, if you'll ask. So, one I like to ask all of my guests is, are there any books that have just marked your life? Something that has been truly impactful, you feel like is a must read, or maybe it's a recent book that you've read that you're finding really good value in that you would want to share with us?
Yeah. So obviously this is my number one recommendation for people is Magic of Thinking Big, especially chapter 2, which is Cure Yourself of Excuse-itis to Failure Disease. So that's number one. Then a recent book that I've been reading through and I'm going to be doing a leadership training on soon is High Road Leadership, John's newest book. Amazing book, but it's all about, really, it ties in well with the adding value principle, right? So it's all about valuing people and really creating that unity, which is a great book to teach from. Very excited about some upcoming training I'm going to be doing with that book.
Absolutely. And I know for High Road Leadership, that's John's latest book that just came out. So it came out in early May was the official launch date. I know I
Yep.
saw you had the signed copy that they gave out at the IMC event, or were providing at the
Yep.
IMC event. That was It's a book that I got at launch day because I wasn't at IMC, and I'm currently nearing the end of the book, and it has been a fantastic read because truly in that regard, I can speak to that where bringing people together and dealing with division, and especially, both of us were located in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and we see whether it's political division, it's division between, there's even division and arguments people have over sports teams, and they'll even get
Yes,
mad and almost come to a fight over a sports team. So we have
I've
all
seen
this
it.
crazy division, and we need more leaders that are willing to take the high road and focus on bringing people together. So that's definitely a great book. Sounds like you're preparing to do some training on it. I'm currently studying. I'm probably going to have some training of my own for my area here in Hickory, North Carolina, that's going to be coming soon on that as well. So I know
Awesome.
all of our Maxwell coaches have been provided some of the information in regards to that, and I know a lot of them are
Yeah, I've
going to be
already
starting to
submitted a
do that.
proposal for one company to do a training with them on it because
That's
it's a
that's
great
awesome.
resource.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to start offering it out to some of my network as well. So, really looking forward to that. So, Michael, another question for you. If you could just leave us with one very important piece of advice, you could just speak into the audience and give them one very strong piece of advice. What's something that you would want to leave us with today?
One thing would be look for opportunities to add relationships wherever you go. I mean, to create relationships wherever you go. I believe in creating relationships inside of the organization that I'm working with, and even outside of it. Just look for opportunities everywhere, right? So you were talking about adding value, but also just creating those genuine relationships. Because this, I've had so many doors open as a result of creating relationships, just from networking with people and the right people.
Absolutely. And it's the same for me. There's been many opportunities, whether that's job opportunities, training opportunities for leadership, things like that, that truly just come out of relationships. Just people, networking, acquaintances you have. So that's a very good piece of advice. So, Michael, if people want to connect with you, follow you on social media, anything like that, how would somebody go about finding you and finding more about you?
Absolutely. So one is you can go to my website, michaelpopetraining.com. You can also find me on all major social media platforms at Michael J. Pope Jr. That's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Those are the main ones that I'm on.
Sounds good. So, Michael, I will link all of those in the description for our podcast guests. So, if you are watching or listening to this podcast, check the description down below or in the information. The links to the books that we talked about, those will be in the description as well. All of Michael's social medias, along with my social medias, all of those are going to be down in the description so you can follow along and connect with us. This podcast, we have new episodes coming out every single week. So be sure to subscribe, follow along. And if you find value in this content, wherever you consume it, whether it's podcast, video, please subscribe, leave us a rating, like the video, share it, whatever you can do to help us grow this community, because this podcast lives to serve people and help them unlock their leadership. I want to thank you for joining me on the Dyson Leadership Podcast. And Michael, I want to say especially thank you for joining me on the podcast today. It's been a pleasure
Thank you.
to talk with you.
Yes.
All right, podcast listeners, hope to have you join me again on another podcast next week.